most aggressively and effectively utilized a relationship with faith-based actors were Nashville and Miami. So the purpose of today's call is we've done a kind of a scan of the country. We've got a series of best practices up on a resource site, which I'm going to ask Chris to bring up for a second, which is a little more attractive than my picture, actually. So there's a list of resources that have been put together, and they can be accessed from the site you use to log in and register. And in particular, there's a paper that our moderator, Bill Eimicke, has done that looks at aspects of faith-based and City Hall housing. And Chris is highlighting that. And you can, let's just bring up that paper just for a second, Chris. Okay, so those resources are there, and they'll stay up after the meeting for faith-based organizations and city officials who want to do a little more research on the issue, and we'll also create a way that you can ask questions through us to various organizations that are listed on the resource page. Today, we've asked Bill Eimicke, who's part of this project, if he would participate. He will take over shortly on the questions and answers. Bill was housing director for Governor Cuomo, featured in David Osborne's first book on reinventing government, specialist in both housing and innovation, who has helped us study the terrain. With that, here's how I think we'll proceed. We'll ask Mr. Bogart to make brief comments and thank him again for his sponsorship. After that, I don't know which mayor is prepared to go first. And we ask Mayor Diaz to present, and then Mayor Purcell. When Mayor Purcell is finished, Bill will take over with moderating the questions and answers. And Chris reminds me that Reverend Height. I remembered, Jay, I remembered you more vividly when I was running for office, and you're one of my constituents. I momentarily forgot here for a second.
Leave the town, you leave me.
I know. After the two mayors, there'll be very interesting perspective from Reverend Height, who has been enormously effective in homeless issues, but with a perspective about why sectarian service delivery has beneficial aspects different than secular service delivery. And so after Jay responds to the mayors, then Bill will take over for the questions and answers. So with that, Mr. Bogart.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. Mayor Diaz, Mayor Purcell, Mayor Goldsmith, and other distinguished guests, I just wanted to welcome you to our meeting today. Thank you for taking time out of your day, all of you, for being here. The Department of Housing and Urban Development Center for Faith-Based and Community Initiatives has established the Unlocking Doors initiative that highlights and promotes successful local strategies for involving faith-based and community organizations and developing affordable housing plans and promoting home ownership. Our mission of the Center for Faith-Based and Community Initiatives is to cultivate support for faith-based and community organizations as they strengthen America's communities. I believe, as does President Bush and Secretary Jackson, that the real solutions happen at the grassroots. They happen at ground zero, and it's in the communities such as Miami and Nashville and other great cities across this country is really where the solutions to the local problems occur and where they're implemented and executed. And through our mission and through the Unlocking Doors initiative, we're helping to bring some of these strategies to bear. Through the Unlocking Doors initiative, our office sought to research, identify, and document innovative and successful partnerships between cities and faith-based and community organizations. To accomplish this goal, 12 cities, initially 6, and then due to demand we added another 6, were identified, and meetings were held in these cities with key community leaders to discuss their efforts, help resolve problems, and gather information about housing and home ownership that might be replicated in other communities. This project, titled Unlocking Doors, includes discussions with the offices of mayors and key leaders in cities such as Chicago, Oakland, Miami, Nashville, and Buffalo, New York, just to name a few. These cities were chosen because of their existing relationships with faith-based and community organizations, and their experiences promoting and developing housing strategies and promoting home ownership for those in need. The Center for Faith-Based and Community Initiatives recognizes the critical role that faith-based and community organizations have in affordable housing development through CDCs and other community-based organizations. Our center works with American communities to improve the quality of HUD's response to human need. 3 core activities form the cornerstone to this objective. First of all, providing important services and offering invaluable help to those who need it the most. Secondly, actively reaching out to faith-based and community organizations and connecting faith-based and community groups to opportunities, resources, support, and partnerships within their communities. Unlocking Doors is a 2-part strategy, which will identify what methods and practices were used that has made the city successful in its community housing efforts. Answers to such questions as what kinds of partnerships were formed, who were the partners, and how did they allocate their responsibilities? Did these partnerships leverage community funding in productive ways? We've seen many success stories through this initiative. Unlocking Doors eliminated project delays resulting from permits, surveys, and other obstacles that often resulted in cost overruns. Projects have been completed in a timely manner as a result of the bridge that was built through Unlocking Doors. Local and state governments enhanced communications between City Hall officials and faith-based and community leaders because of the face-to-face contact afforded to these leaders through Unlocking Doors. I'd like to just briefly talk about some key benchmarks that should be replicated. First of all, in Miami, which, by the way, Mayor Diaz, it was my first trip in my official capacity, and I also had the pleasure of taking a walk across the street to hear your State of the City address, which was very impressive and very inspiring, especially in the 3 or 4 languages that you gave it in. But one of the highlights in Miami is to strengthen the relationship between City Hall and faith-based organizations. Mayor Diaz established the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives and Community Outreach to really better position the residents and organizations to help launch a poverty initiative that focused on building wealth and financial literacy. In Nashville, during his first year in office, Mayor Purcell convened the Nashville Affordable Housing Summit, bringing key private and public sector stakeholders together to strategize how to increase affordable housing and home ownership opportunities. And adapting the summit's goal as part of his housing agenda, Mayor Purcell increased production levels and established a target of producing or rehabilitating 35,000 units in Nashville by 2010. So, Unlocking Doors participants shared a number of strategies that could be used by other communities interested in forming stronger partnerships between City Hall and the faith community in order to increase affordable housing and home ownership opportunities. Some of these ideas include establishing a local housing trust. A flexible local housing trust fund, even if modestly funded, creates important momentum in a community. The fund is a resource for nonprofit and faith-based organizations. It attracts private sector investment, and it grows over time. Hosting a housing summit. A housing summit is a valuable forum for stakeholders to jointly assess needs, plan, organize, and establish common goals for mobilizing action. Summits also signal that affordable housing and home ownership are high priorities and can provide a benchmark for future progress. Offering financial counseling and home buyer education. Some participants believe that the key role for churches is using local congregation members to educate would-be home buyers and help rehabilitate their credit. And creatively seeking partners. While faith-based organizations and City Hall regularly turns to developers and banks for assistance, they can also reach out to new partners, not typically associated with affordable housing and home ownership. For example, local universities are resources that can offer courses, provide interns, and provide space for workshops. These transferable strategies, combined with the lessons shared by each city in the profile section, provides mayors and faith-based organizations with a menu of options for strengthening their joint affordable housing and home ownership initiatives across many areas: leadership, partnerships, community involvement. One of my favorite, treating affordable housing development like a business, realizing that developing affordable housing is a business, and faith-based and community organizations must develop strong relationships with banks and financial institutions. In order to succeed, nonprofit and faith-based housing developers must anticipate and address the business needs of the financial institutions and their for-profit partners. Others noted that some churches feel ambivalence about operating as a business. Another participant echoed in response that churches must understand the need to blend the Bible and business. Since some faith-based organizations tend to lack knowledge on standards for running a business, the faith community needs education and best practices and standards for management and development projects, a need that City Hall and the Center for Faith-Based and Community Initiative at HUD might address. We also see a tremendous need to focus again on education, marketing, possibly to coincide with National Home Ownership Month, which I believe is coming up in June. Government housing policies is something that we need to consider. And government agencies, developers, and faith-based and community organizations must work together to institute policies that preserve sufficient land for affordable housing, given the rapidly increasing cost of housing and land in most urban areas. In closing, I just want to talk about the national model for success, and then briefly about the three goals that we have at the Center of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. The decision of Reverend Floyd Flake to take a direct role in developing and upgrading properties adjacent to his church in Queens clearly demonstrates that faith-based organizations can and do change the urban environment and develop decent neighborhoods with affordable housing. His approach is to own and maintain control of nearby land so that the benefits of development remain with the community and its people, not to go to outside interests. Reverend Flake says no one can get within 26 blocks of this church and any property that's for sale or vacant, because if it's for sale or vacant, we buy it. We take charge of it. Therefore, we control what happens in our community. That's just one example. I think we find some of those great examples in Miami, in Nashville, and other cities across the country, and they're all different. And that's what's great about our different cities, because different solutions work in different places, but a lot can be shared across the board. So in closing, our focus at the Center, our goals for 2006, are to reduce barriers to faith-based and community organizations' participation in HUD-sponsored programs. We have to be very clear that an organization, just because it's faith-based or religious-based, should not be discriminated against because of what it believes or its values. If it's doing community service work in a time and a place that's separate from its religious activities, then those organizations have every right to participate in whatever federal grant program pertains to them in their communities, and we have to make sure that that's happening. Our center also conducts outreach and provides technical assistance to strengthen the capacity of faith-based and community organizations across the country. We've reached out and met with over 20,000 individuals from 10,000 organizations over the last 2 years with our grant writing training. We're going so far in the Gulf region, in the hurricane-affected areas, to go down and talk about our supernova process so they know exactly how to compete. We've set up computer terminals so organizations who may not have a broadband connection can sign up to grants.gov and apply for federal dollars. We're very active in communities, and we'd love to be active in yours. And lastly, we want to continue to encourage partnerships between faith-based and community organizations, cities, states, HUD grantees, sub-grantees, because we're all in this together, and we need to work together as a team to really impact the communities that need the most help across the country. So with that, Mayor Goldsmith, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for your time.
Rob, thank you so much. This is Bill Eimicke. I'll be moderating the phone exchange here. Mayor Diaz, I'd like to introduce your presentation. You're known well to everyone around the country for your incredible work in revitalizing the economy and the housing sector in Miami. I know close to home you were selected as the Urban Innovator of the Year by our Manhattan Institute here in New York, and I know you also co-chair the Conference of Mayors Task Force on Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. So we're very fortunate to have you here, and I was with Rob down in Miami. The presentation your folks made was really outstanding and memorable, so let me quickly turn it over to you, and again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Bill. And first of all, what language would you like me to do this in?
I think Trail would be perfect.
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I think this is it's fantastic for all of us to be able to be linked up this way. I'm still having a tough time remembering the initial explanation as to how to work this, but at least my role here is only to talk, so that's easy. I think Rob probably covered a lot of areas that I had wanted to cover, but I guess fundamentally what I have to start with is the firm belief that from the moment I got elected, my strong belief in involving the faith-based community in just about everything that we've done, from mentoring programs to prisoner reentry to, as Rob mentioned, our anti-poverty program, crime type of initiatives like prevent gun violence initiative. Miami is a very unique city in a lot of respects, and not the least of which is the fact that 60% of our residents are foreign-born. That's the highest percentage that we've been able to find of any other large city in America, and so many of foreign-born residents are very active in churches, but churches of all denominations. And in all of our neighborhoods. And as a result, I believe that the faith-based community has a tremendous role in improving the quality of life of people in Miami. One of the things that we did is we created quarterly pastoral roundtables, we call them, where we come together every so often to really go through issues, to go through a series of issues that we all deal with: crime, drugs, at-risk youth, unemployment. And in particular, most recently, in the last few years, focusing a lot on housing. And our record there is one that I feel particularly good about. Our affordable housing production in the city right now, just to estimate, will probably be somewhere around 20 to 25%, with involving faith-based partners in the development. And that is a remarkable increase from when I got elected. Affordable housing development, as we all know, is not easy. It's difficult. It requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of coordination. I know that here, many of our developers struggle having to deal with the city, having to deal with the county, and in many cases having to deal with the state. And it is difficult, particularly for a faith-based or for a CDC, to survive. Sometimes through the maze of government regulations and applications and everything that has to happen before you actually can break ground. So one of the things that, and in this area, I think Rob identified one thing, which is that a lot of these organizations already have land, which is obviously they come in to us, to the city, with land that's been identified. Obviously, the faith-based community is trusted by the people in the neighborhoods, particularly the neighborhoods that we most want to encourage affordable housing development in. Help us identify buyers, acting as in some respects, almost as brokers in the neighborhood to identify those that would qualify, and those that would qualify. So I think those are some things that we've seen that obviously have been very helpful. Again, capacity is a challenge, experience in the area, and as a result of that, I think that's why one of the things that we've done, not just with the faith-based community, but really with all that are in the affordable housing development market here, encouraging private joint venture partnerships, as I think Rob also said. To quote, affordable housing is a business. It has to be looked upon as a business, because one of the things that we found when I first got elected, been a lot of money committed. There have been a lot of land committed that had sat for 5, 10, 15, in some cases even longer, without so much as a brick to show. So we in the last 3 years, our leverage right now is that for every dollar that the city puts in, we're getting about $18 worth of leverage from the private market. We have also created an affordable housing trust fund where our developers, primarily obviously in the affluent areas, are paying into a fund in return for a density bonus, and we're using some of those funds here. We've also established financial literacy programs. In fact, we just got an award from the U.S. Conference of Mayors on, and home buyer counseling as well. We have a very significant homeless program, and we run the HOPWA program down here. Something else that we've done, I think, that's been very, very helpful is to create in our community development department an expediter. So from the moment that, even in some cases, even before construction drawings are submitted, we have someone from our community development department that is working with the CDC and working with the developer to walk through to initially react to the plans, and then once the plans are formalized and brought into the building department, to walk those plans through and serve as a conduit back and forth between the builder and the city building department. So I mean, those are some of the things that we've done. As I said, 20 to 25%, and we have a number of other units that are now in the pipeline. And I think we've broken the mold of what used to exist and what used to prevent the kind of production that we're seeing now. And I think that the future is only going to get better.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll be back to you. We have questions waiting for you already, but Mayor Purcell, I'd like to ask you to jump in now. Those of us who follow housing know your name very well. Probably one of the most well-known public officials in the housing area, both for the summit and what you've done since the summit. I know you also have a background in children and family policy at Vanderbilt and on the legislative side, so that all fits together with community development. Again, it's a great honor to have you with us. We also visited your wonderful city and heard great things there as well. So rather than me talking about what you do, we're lucky to have you to talk about it instead. So please begin.
Well, thanks, Bill, and it's frankly an honor for me to be in such good company today. For Nashville, Tennessee, the notion of the faith community invigorating a city is not new. I think many people who are part of this call may know that Nashville is the home of the Southern Baptist Convention and the Southern Baptist Publishing House, now called Lifeway, the National Baptist Convention, the National Baptist Publishing House, and the R.H. Boyd Publishing House that also serves the National Baptist Convention, the United Methodist Publishing House, the AME Publishing House, the Disciples of Christ Historical Society, the Vanderbilt Theological Seminary, the American Baptist College, as well as Thomas Nelson, the world's largest publisher of Bibles, and of course the Gideon Society that distributes so many of those Bibles around the world. Nashville is a place that understands the critical importance to the faith community in every aspect of what a city is and what a city can be. But as I came into office in 1999, I had in hand an audit which had just been produced, really from the not-for-profit sector. The Rotary Club and the faith community specifically had come together to do their own audit of housing needs in Nashville. And that's where that 35,000 figure that Rob mentioned earlier came from. They had determined, I think actually quite well, that there was an immediate need for 35,000 units of affordable housing in the city of Nashville. And I arrived in the mayor's office with that knowledge for the first time, not just available to me, but frankly to the whole city. The faith community, like faith communities across this country, had been doing what it could, house by house, church by church, neighborhood by neighborhood. There was a sense that they were contributing, but there was also a sense that this gap would never be filled if we just all kept doing what we were doing. That's what caused inside the mayor's office, and for me, the need for an office of affordable housing, a center a center point for all contact on this subject. But it was an Office of Affordable Housing that knew from the start that there was never going to be the capacity within government to fill this gap or the housing gap generally in a city. And some would argue, I think accurately, that idea that the government acting alone could solve the problem was not just proven wrong, but abandoned long ago. We couldn't do it, but we also knew that if everybody kept doing individually what they were doing, we would never get there. And so there was an early first effort to come together and acknowledge that. That wasn't simple. Everyone who was pedaling as fast as they thought they could had a sense that if it's not broken, don't fix it. The answer came from us, and this is where the government could play a role. It's not that it's broken, it's just that at this rate, in this way, we will never fill this gap. And I think in pretty short order, everyone in the faith community and in the larger housing community came together. And that resulted in a number of very specific initiatives that I'll talk about very quickly. Let me cut to the chase. Since I've been mayor, since 1999, we have created within the city of Nashville, when I say we, I mean broadly, the for-profit and not-for-profit sectors with the government helping. We've created 19,000 new affordable housing opportunities in Nashville-Davidson County, and we believe we will close that total gap of 35,000 by the end of this decade, if not a little before. What we did, obviously, was look out first at the established and clear providers, some with clear ties to the faith community. Habitat for Humanity was active here as it was in other places, but they had an idea of doing something they hadn't done before, which was developing a large single-family subdivision, a true neighborhood, all created by Habitat. Centex Corporation had land that they did not wish to develop. It was almost 50 acres of land next to an existing neighborhood in the city of Nashville, served by by public schools within close walking distance. And Habitat took that on with our support and the support of lots of individual faith partners. And so far, that almost 50 acres is 40 individual homes, and will build out by no later than 2009 at 141 homes, in the center of which is a park that was supported by first Centex and then other private contributors. HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, assisted in that. But the city of Nashville then will keep it up in perpetuity. We also early on identified one of the great unmet needs in the city of Nashville as owner-occupied rehabilitation, or rehabilitation of owner-occupied homes. A lot cheaper, a lot quicker, keeping people in the homes they were already in. The city of Nashville, using federal funds through our MDHA, doing as much as it could, as quick as it could under normal government regulations, was rehabilitating between 30 and 50 homes a year. Again, the waiting list was incredibly long. There was no way we were ever going to close that gap. And so we reached out to a faith-based organization which includes a number of different churches and denominations within the city of Nashville. The name of the group is Reconstruct, and they stepped up to provide the workforce, to provide the labor. We agreed to reimburse up to $5,000 in materials per house, and in some rare cases up to $3,000 in labor where specific kinds of labor was needed that they could not find within their existing workforce. As a result, Reconstruct has, during this time, basically 1999 to the present, rehabilitated over 500 homes, a number that we never would have reached without their ability to reach out and attract an incredibly diverse workforce, people who had skills. Many of them retired, were in churches, in other faith organizations, and were ready to step up and do the work, but they needed the materials and they needed a center organizer. Reconstruct, as a group outside of government, moved faster, moved harder, and brought more to bear than we ever could have done, and frankly were doing under existing government programs. We then utilized our community development corporations, and some of the strongest, frankly, are the 6 faith-based CDCs in the city of Nashville that are focused on producing housing. Of those, I'll mention 3 quickly. 15th Avenue Baptist Church has a very strong CDC, and they stepped up first in the neighborhoods surrounding the church to work on individual family homes, but they then quickly, with our support, moved out and built a 22 senior unit. They're constructing that now, plus a separate mixed use, which is 12 units of apartment living with retail down below, all of it sustaining the neighborhood around the church, and all of it involving both the neighborhood itself and the church membership, which is very broad and actually spreads out across the whole city, being an urban church that, while its membership has moved, has continued to hold its faith community together in the city. I can tell you as well that the faith community remains, as Mayor Diaz indicated, in Miami, very involved in our homeless initiatives. Our now more than 50-year-old union mission was specifically and explicitly started. The first recognition of homelessness as an issue in the city of Nashville began really with the faith community creating our union mission, which continues to be supported by a wide number of individual faith communities as well, and also is complemented by our Room at the Inn program. They are very much involved in our commitment to the President's commitment to end chronic homelessness within the decade, and we think that we're on track, although I would say much earlier in our efforts there than I think we are in the overall provision of affordable housing. And then I think there's a great opportunity, and while we're also just at the start of this, I think there's a great need and opportunity for faith-based providers to help with special needs populations. They can work with our Metro Social Services, but I think ultimately will lead, as the Bethesda CDC is doing, to purchase and rehabilitate a family home into a facility that can accommodate up to 6 individuals with wraparound services that are brought to bear, some of them governmental, some of them not-for-profit, but all of them coming through that faith-based CDC. One of the major outcomes, I think, from all of this is not simply the production of housing opportunities for people, but it is that with this much community involvement and with faith community involvement leading the way, there is very little resistance within neighborhoods to these products, to these improvements. I'm very much aware, as every mayor is, of the often seen reaction of neighborhoods to not being called upon to do more than they were already doing in the service of the city. And frankly, in affordable housing, because of this approach and because of the number of partners we have seen virtually no NIMBY reactions to these programs. And where they have occurred, they have been easily and quickly addressed, and the neighborhoods have gone back to the business of being neighborhoods and not concerned about the construction of housing for people who need that right now if they're ever going to be part of the American dream.
Thank you, Mayor Purcell. Excellent presentation. Really, really helpful. Now let's turn to someone from the other side of the equation, Reverend Height from Indianapolis, the Shepherd Community Center. I know that you built your organization from an extremely small and modest organization, staff of 3, to a multi-million-dollar operation. Can you tell us a little bit about how it's been as a faith-based organization working with government, particularly under the burden of Steve Goldsmith when he was there?
Well, we miss him. We operate in a city that has had both extremes, where we've had office holders who embraced what we did, and office holders who were probably a little more standoffish. And I think what the faith-based community has, and I'll agree with the mayor on, we understand the neighborhoods because this is where we live, work, and worship. And I believe the whole approach of building this, and this is what we saw when Goldsmith was here, that it was not that the faith community had all the answers, not that the government had all the answers, but together we could bring our specialty. And for someone like Shepherd Community and what we do, we have the ability to work with families, and we know families, and we're working with them. And housing is just one component of it. And you can take a family and put them in a house. If you've not engaged with the other issues, you're not going to be able to successfully deal with those problems, and they're going to surface whether they have a roof over their head or not. And so the ability that the faith community has is to journey with and to serve alongside. And I'm just going to hit. I'm trying to work here on the slide. A couple of things that we think that we see. We believe that the partnership between faith community and government makes better neighborhoods. That when we're working alongside, we make the jobs easier for our law enforcement. We make it better for our home inspection folks. We have solutions that can help. We also feel like that part of what we there are some things that the government is going to do well, and there are going to be some things that they are not going to do well. But I'm going to just go through here where, from my point of view, what I see they do. And I think the mayor from Miami sort of hit on my first point is, I don't know the governmentese. I don't know how to speak the language. I know how to work with families. I know how to deal with life issues. And so having someone who's appointed to speak that language and can be my liaison with City Hall is one of the biggest helps that for us. And we wanted to close right across the street from us was a drug alley. And this was when Mayor Goldsmith was still here, and it took 53 governmental agencies to sign off on an unused alley. Well, the reality is, do I know what all those are and how to do that, or does government know how to work best with government? And that was a great answer for us, that the Front Porch Alliance here took that and bulldogged that through all the floors of City Hall and came back to us and said, okay, here's your desire. You want this closed alley. Now you turn it into a garden. And we were able to do that. One of the other things that second and the third ones go together is government says it's okay to work with the faith community, and business will follow the lead of the government. It is not that, I'm going to make someone espouse the beliefs I have to be able to get the house. I wouldn't agree with that, but we are who we are, and folks, when government says, it's okay to work with them, they're inclusive in what they do, that helps set us up for new and better partnerships. I also think because we're at the ground floor of the neighborhoods and really are dealing with folks where they are, that helps get the approvals. As the mayor from Nashville said, people, we don't have problems getting things through. And interestingly enough, we're building a new center, and it was broken into over the weekend. It was the neighborhood who brought the guy forward who did it, because they embrace and know we're here to help them and we're on their side. And so that stamp of approval that comes from the neighbors, because they are who we are. They're our neighbors. They're not our clients. One of the ideas I put here is this connecting needs with business surplus. One of the great benefits we had just prior to a major company going out of business here in town, the mayor's office set up that they could donate all of their items, and the faith community got together and put together a warehouse and provided that to the city for these items. And so this great things that were able to then be used both in centers as well as in many of the homes we were working in were made available that otherwise would have probably been trashed. So that was just a huge help to us. I give some examples here. Number one is One Heart, Many Hands. We are part of, I'm ordained in the Church of the Nazarene, and we have our World Conference every 4 years. This past year, 3,000 volunteers came in the week before our conference and renovated 110 homes in our neighborhood. And what we did is we went and worked with the health department and found out those homes where they were either elderly or had some kind of problems, and said, how can we help these people stay in their homes? And so we put on roofs and replaced furnaces and did those types of things. One of the struggles was, and what would have made it so much easier, is if we would have had the bulldog in City Hall to handle all the permits and to do those things. We brought in thousands of dollars and kept people from losing their homes, kept them from being cited, saved the government lots of money, and it would have been great to have that help. I already shared the story of the drug alley and just 53 agencies having to sign off to shut down an unused alley that was only used by the drug dealers. And then I mentioned the warehouse. The last one is, and this is a lesson for folks like us, and that is don't marry the elected official. Every 4 years, usually, positions change. And we have to be engaged with government at several levels. And so what I have taken, a lesson I learned, is I'm not married to one person. I'm married to the institution. And so that means we have to be bipartisan in what we do and working. Don't cross the line, and don't, sit here and expect folks to fund my church, expect the government. That's not what they're here for. And, we were running programs in the city park, and they said, well, you can't do a Bible study in the park. And I said, I don't want to do a Bible study. I want to do soccer in the park. Same thing goes with housing. When we are trying to help a family get into a house that we've partnered with someone to renovate, we want to help them get into the house. We can deal with the other issues. And finally, I think one of my cautions as I speak to groups throughout the United States, faith communities, is don't run after the money. Find things that help you do what you could do without it and do it better. And if we as faith-based group, nonprofits, can get away from the money signs, we'll be much better and be able to better help the government in this partnership of bringing everyone to the table and bringing all the pieces of the pie together to impact lives and help families in all their areas of need.
Reverend, thank you very much. We've got a number of questions here. Let me remind people that they can continue to submit questions. We'll try to summarize them, and we've got a couple that kind of group together. And let me start with Mayor Purcell, and then all of our panelists, I think, can jump in on this one. Questions from a number of smaller cities saying, how do they respond to the situation where faith-based organizations in their community are reluctant to take federal funds? We know that even Habitat early on in its history was very reluctant to take governmental funding of any type. So, Mayor Purcell, having so many faith-based organizations in your community, have you run into that problem, and how did you handle it? And then whoever else wants to jump in, please.
Well, I mean, I think there's sort of two parts to the answer. The first is that it's like everything else. It makes life more difficult and more complicated, but that's the challenge that you face, and you need to just get over it and get on with it. The city can be helpful, both directly and through the connection of faith communities to private support, to help them work through the accounting and auditing questions, just to make sure that they're not going to get caught in a trap that's not of their own making. I understand that fear. The other piece is that it's easy for them to partner with other churches and other organizations. The Reconstruct group I mentioned is a perfect example of where you've got a not-for-profit set up separately that's in a position to do all of the financial elements of this and do them right, but then there's plenty of opportunity for individual churches in the community and synagogues in our case and everybody to engage in the provision of the labor and the other support that are necessary. You can do it yourself, but if you don't think you can certainly find either another organization or create a not-for-profit that can do it and keep it both close to your roots but also at enough distance that the rest of your business doesn't get commingled.
And if I could answer that as well, as a faith-based group that has $1 million budget, we have not gone after governmental monies yet. We're not opposed to it, but we weren't ready infrastructure-wise to support it. What we've chosen to do is work with neighborhood CDCs, community development corporations, to partner on these housing projects where they know how to do that. They can do it much better than us. We just don't have the money coming through us, and we're fine with that.
Mayor Diaz or Director Bogart, do you want to jump in on that one, or should we move to another question?
Well, just very briefly, this is Manny. We really haven't seen that much of a problem, but I'll agree with a couple things that Mayor Purcell said. One thing we've tried to do is to provide the volunteers to help with capacity issues in terms of some of the technical support, and that's been very helpful. And the other thing is that through the pastoral roundtables that I've mentioned, we've actually helped explain some of this and helped allay some of the fears that some of them may have had when they first walked in. A lot of that has gone away through just communication.
Great.
And just a quick thing that I'd like to add is that's one of the reasons we focus so much on outreach and technical assistance, reaching out to the 20,000 people and over 10,000 organizations the last few years. And we talk specifically about those points. And one of the biggest fears is the organizations and the people in the organizations just don't know what those requirements are. And we go through them in great detail, and they leave with a binder, a nice course guide of what we cover. So they know exactly what the process they have to go through when they take federal money. And because of this training, we've seen on average 50% of the organizations that go to the training that we have a staff of 3 or less. Their budgets are $100,000 or less, yet they have they've been in business on average for about 12 years. And again, as a result, over $48 million of new funding public and private dollars have gone to these organizations directly as a result of attending the training that we put them through.
Rob, as long as I have you here, the number of questions that really fall into your ballpark, and they have really two parts. One is, how is this initiative going to continue to roll out? Will it continue to roll out? If so, how? And secondly, what about the prospects for housing funding, given the proposals to cut back on federal funds in the President's budget? So where's the program going, and how are you going to deal with fewer resources to carry it out if you are going to keep going?
Well, you know, we certainly have every intention to continue the ball rolling, and one question that I'm faced with often is what happens if there's an administration change, or what happens if there's you know, the next president is from a different political party. I mean, I think we've seen such strong success, at least over the last couple of years, in terms of our outreach, in terms of helping to level the playing field, helping to eliminate the inherent discrimination that was in place in large part before this initiative rolled out in 2001. So I think we've made a lot of progress, and we've really emphasized the fact that, you know, that these organizations are where the rubber hits the road. You know, these grassroots organizations have the solutions for the communities, and if they have the right business plan in place, if they have transparency, if they have the right capacity and organizational leadership, they should receive funding just like any other organization. And our business, so to speak, is to help them understand those things and to point them in the right direction and give them that support. You know, it's difficult to address the question of funding cuts. I mean, there's a lot of conflicting priorities right now. And the president has certainly made it clear, based on where the funding is being allocated, in terms of what he thinks are programs that work and continue to be funded. Well, at the same time, we have to tighten our belts. That's never an easy or a acceptable answer to a lot of people. But you know, we're in an era where prioritization is absolutely critical.
Shifting gears a little bit, let me throw this to either one of the mayors. Is there a recipe for success that you've seen, certain characteristics of faith-based organizations that are able to deal successfully with public-private partnerships? Are there certain attributes that they have compared to the ones that have more of a difficulty in making the transition?
Well, I think this is Bill Purcell in Nashville. I think in this, as in so many other things, individual leadership within a congregation or within a group of people is critical. While I know we've had a lesson not to marry the mayor, and I as a mayor who's already married, I think
that's good advice.
That's good advice, and I recommend that you follow it. I do think the existence of leaders within organizations, whether they are public organizations like a city or within these individual congregations, can often be critical. It doesn't have to be the pastor, it doesn't have to be the rabbi, but there has to be somebody within the organization that sees this as a calling and continues to bring people together and lift them up, and making sure that leadership is not only sustained, but that there are other leaders waiting in the wings as individual leaders tire, is just as critical in a church as it is at General Electric.
And I would obviously agree with that, and I would only add this, and that is that one of the things that I have found, and I think Rob alluded to this somehow, is progress has been made over the last 2 or 3 years, and as a result of that, what's happened is that a new leadership has emerged, a new leadership no different than in the private sector or in the government sector, a new group of people who are willing to think outside the box, break down the walls, and work with government, and work with the private sector. So it's a new leadership that has been willing to expand from what used to be very institutional.
Mayor Diaz, let me stick with you. I've got a question that really relates to your situation. The question is, how do you get the private sector to participate in the development of low-income rental housing? Are there incentives other than land that you can use, and what has been your experience on that side?
Land, money, expediting, partnering up with others. zoning changes that we've instituted. Anything else? That's a summary.
Okay, great. Would you either one of you mayors and Rob, maybe you jump in too? Are the experiences in Miami and Nashville typical, or are they different? And if so, what makes their environments, other than obviously enlightened and exceptional mayors, make their cities more able to make this move into successful partnerships?
You know, this is Rob, and I'll just jump in because it might be, you know, with some modest and humble mayors on the line, it might be difficult for them to answer that. But I think leadership is absolutely key. And have I seen other instances in other communities where they've done an exceptional job? I absolutely have, and it's because of the leadership of the mayors or the council people or the county board or the governor, and I firmly believe that the success in Nashville and in Miami is directly attributable to the mayors and to the leaders in that community. So I don't want to sell that short. I mean, these leaders have to come in with the vision. They have to know, you know, what their goals are, how they're going to be measured. And then be able to turn that around and say, okay, this is what I said I was going to do. These were the goals. This is how I said that they were going to be measured, and these are the results, and that's what they're doing. And in absence of those types of things, I think you could have some very good ideas, but without the execution, you're just not going to be as successful.
This is Manny. I just want to say that I attribute much of my success to being smart enough to copy what Mayor Goldsmith and Mayor Purcell and others have done before me.
I do think one of the things that it falls to all of us to do inside and outside of the government, and this is Bill Purcell, is to keep putting before people the critical nature of housing, of affordable housing, and the fact that for our cities to be successful, we're going to have to be safe. That takes public safety. We're going to have to have good schools. All these things that we're now finally inculcating, I think, into urban fabric are important, but we have to add always to the list this basic notion of housing. I was with the mayor of San Jose recently, and he said, you know, my median house price now is $750,000. I have to pay $40,000 as a signing bonus to bring a teacher into the school system. When the affordable housing piece gets lost in a city, just like these other basic needs, then the city has the potential to be lost as well. So I think it does fall to all of us to just keep making sure year after year in all that we do that we establish that firmly as a precondition of success in a city. And when that's done, my experience with faith communities like neighborhoods themselves is if they understand it's got to be done, then they tend to try to do it. And from there, the leaders and all of us together can help get them there.
Great. I got a question, again, throw this out to any one of the mayors or Rob. Involving faith-based organizations in the planning process when a neighborhood is chosen for revitalization or just in general the overall housing plans. I know in some respects the summit, Mayor Purcell, that you held was kind of a big event that at least kicked off involving other people, outsiders, particularly faith-based, in the planning process. But tips or ideas or how you do it on a regular basis?
Well, the summit was a great beginning, and what we did then was commit to do it every year. And so year after year, we bring everybody back together again. We don't just check in with each other. We report on our housing production up to that point, try to target a specific area of concern and focus, and then go back out. In individual neighborhoods, I really do think a CDC that can be closely connected, as I think in Indianapolis we have the example, with a church that has both a neighborhood focus as well as a broader community focus is critically important. And 15th Avenue, which I mentioned early in my remarks, is such a church here. 15th Avenue Baptist Church really has not only been a place to bring neighbors together for public hearings, but also a place that has the broader view of the whole city and the way in which this neighborhood connects to it. And so in that case, that particular church becomes the lighthouse, and that CDC isn't just a business. It's itself a place that connects everybody to the overall goals.
Let me throw this one out to Reverend Height. A couple of people have asked, how do you get the collaboration going? How do you actually get the process starting? Obviously, the summit was one mechanism, but how did you get it? How did you first get involved in working more directly with the government, and how might you suggest other faith-based organizations try to get started if they're not already involved?
Well, I think it's important to understand that government's people too, and so it's about relationships, and that it's wanting to build relationships within city government and with these other entities that are partners, and to try and engage together to come up. I think one of the most important things we did was a meeting we had where we invited the mayor's office, law enforcement, and some others to the table, and we sat and we watched this drug alley in work, and we said, okay guys, how can we shut this alley down? This is impacting the folks that we serve. How can we do it? And I didn't go in the mayor's office and said, you got to shut this down. I didn't call a press conference. I didn't try to embarrass folks. I tried to create relationships. And I've lived here in this neighborhood now 10.5 years. And I think that's an important part of, I get to know people, we live here, and then we begin to engage everyone in discussions. And if we're not talking to folks, we're not going to come up with these solutions. We're not going to know who has answers for that. And so it takes time, and that's the other part of it, is we're not going to microwave solutions to these problems that have been decades in the making. We're doing a few houses at a time. It's not something that I'm going to go do a whole block, but we one or two at a time, and we get a family into it, and we're working. And the CDC that we partner with, not that I'm opposed to government money, but they've already got it all figured out. So let's work with them and do what we can bring to the table, and then we make sure we follow up and do what we said we're going to do.
This is Manny. Let me just absolutely agree with what the Reverend Height just said, and trust and relationships are critical. Establishing a fairly regular amount of contacts like we have with our roundtables is essential to keep that communication going. Something that was mentioned earlier by the Reverend as well about not marrying the elected official. But it's also true, I think, in what the Reverend was just saying, that we're also not the enemy.
That's right.
And there shouldn't be a fear to involve us in issues in the neighborhood, much like any other constituent involves us. That's about establishing relationships. If you do that, it can work.
And I've seen too many times that neighborhood folks, faith-based groups, we want to go to the press conference. We want to embarrass government into action, and that doesn't create relationships. That's not going to help do any of this, change the neighborhoods at all.
Thank you. I got another question here. It's kind of topical based on some of the experiences we've had in emergency situations. The question is to again, any of the panelists. Do you think faith-based organizations can play a more strategic role in temporary relocation activities, such as we saw with Katrina or other fires, just more local events? Are faith-based organizations involved in your community in emergency housing situations?
For Nashville, I can tell you straightforwardly that the first and easiest connect was with churches in the city, and in fact they stepped up quickly and communicated well with the overall not-for-profit sector. What the city did was bring all the not-for-profits together, but from there, in terms of Nashville and the folks that we saw come through here, and I think Memphis would say the same thing, it was churches that were immediately able to open the doors and find a place for the cots and gave people a place to live.
And I would only add to that we used primarily our homeless coalition locations and just day in and day, not just post disaster type things, but just on a day in and day out basis.
Well, here's a question near and dear to my heart. I hope the answer is no, but do either of your states or localities have any form of rent control, and does that play a negative role in your ability to provide affordable housing?
Nashville does not have that, and Tennessee does not have that.
You don't either.
You're lucky. It's one of the major problems we have struggled with in New York for a very long time, although I think we're making some progress.
And one of the things, though, I think, though, that the government can do on the monetary side, at least this has been our policy, is if you want the city to participate in your downtown project, then we are going to be focused on the housing component. For the first 6 years that I was mayor, we did not make any TIF grant, tax increment financing grant, except to housing. And if you were doing housing, whether it was apartments or ownership opportunities, 20% of the units were going to be affordable. Now, again, your decision. If you don't want the city as a partner, if you don't need TIF financing as part of this deal, you can do it on your own. And we've had we've had a very positive economic environment in our downtown. But if you want to do that, then you're going to be 20% affordable. Our brand new high-rise condominium development called the Viridian, which will be 300 units of luxury housing. 20% of those will be affordable. Mercury View Apartments in downtown Nashville, the highest per square foot rental cost in the city of Nashville, but 20% of the units within that development are affordable. They wanted to build a new baseball stadium, and they brought in private bank financing. We said, fine, but you need TIF to make the deal work, and there's going to be housing as a part of that, and whatever housing is constructed, 20% of that is going to be affordable. So it's another way in which, in a more positive way, I think, the government, utilizing the existing resources we have, can begin to direct both the hearts and the minds and the bulldozers of developers.
Are there, in either one of your cities, are there formal legal processes, like in New York we have a uniform land use procedure when new housing or any new development goes on that requires developers and indeed the public entity to go to local community boards and involve them in the planning process from the very beginning to avoid what was mentioned earlier, the kind of NIMBY effect? Are there formal legal kind of participatory zoning procedures in either one of your cities, or would you think something like that would be useful?
Well, we do have a structure. I mean, we have a structure. We have a planning advisory board. We have a zoning board. But quite frankly, if what they're building, where they're building it is as of right, then it's just a function of the processing the plans through the building department. To the extent that they're working with community development, and to the extent that we're involved in some kind of capacity, then we try to involve the community. But if it's but other than that, if it's just an affordable housing project that we don't necessarily have our fingerprints on and is as of right, then they can just build it.
That would be the same basically in Nashville.
One last question. I think we've exhausted everybody, and I just express my appreciation to everybody for being so active and really utilizing what I think is a very exciting mechanism. A question from a number of participants: how do you guys define affordable in your community? What does affordable mean in terms of level of income?
Well, I'm going to let Hank Helton, who runs my Office of Affordable Housing, give you the specifics.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mayor Purcell. Good afternoon, everyone. Basically, Bill, how we define it is housing that's affordable to households earning 80% or less of median family income that don't spend more than 30% of that income on housing costs. Your standard HUD definition, we do tranche that out and focus on different income levels. For instance, we just released an RFP and are in the process of funding it right now to 3 organizations, 2 of which are faith-based, to do special needs housing to households earning 60 to 50% of less of median family income. But we traditionally use that threshold as that 80%, 30% rule to set the ceiling, if you will, for all of our affordable housing programs.
It would be the same for us, although we're also dealing with what we refer to as affordable workforce housing, in which we're going from 80 to 150.
Great.
Obviously, we're encouraging that because that's a gap that is really at the heart of a lot of the affordable housing issues that we see in the city, because there are programs that we've all been discussing here for 80% below. The difficulty becomes for an affordability gap for people that would be in that 80 to 150% gap.
I agree with Mayor Diaz on that, and that's one of the things that we do working through our other nonprofit intermediary lenders where we do have programs that address that 80 to 115% of median family income based on household income. The dollar amounts may be a little less depending on the need, but that is a critical component as we look at our continuum of financing resources, if you will, to address this market.
All right, before we close, let's do one round of the panel. Any final words of advice or guidance, words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience of community-based and faith-based organizations and local officials? Let's just go through in the order that we began. Mayor Purcell, I guess we'll start with you.
Well, again, I think in this case it is a constant work that is going to require all of us to get up every day and renew again a commitment. The good news about working with faith-based organizations and the people in them is they understand that exactly. Whatever faith we may be ourselves familiar with or come from, whatever our own direction on this, we understand the need to get back up every morning and recommit to basic tenets. And in this case, the critical nature of housing and affordability and its connection to the American dream is something that I think we are all uniquely positioned to continue to hold up before the people in our cities. And if we do that, then ultimately we will sustain the American dream and our cities at the same time.
Hear, hear. Mayor Diaz?
That's right, and affordable housing is at the heart and the health of our city. This level of government is the level of government that is the closest to the people. Sometimes they make decisions up in Washington or Tallahassee, in my case, that aren't the best in these areas, but we are closer to anybody else, and we have to come up with whatever innovations we can to deal with these problems. And our best partners in that process, the faith-based community, who is even closer to the community than we are. So that's a partnership that has shown success and will continue to show success in helping the quality of life of people in our cities.
Thank you, Mayor. Rob?
Deputy Secretary Bernardi, as many of you may know, was the mayor of Syracuse for a number of years before coming out to Washington, and he said over and over again that he could not be successful as mayor without the help from faith-based and community organizations. So our center here is to serve you and all of your communities. So as we're in the process of putting together our training schedule and outreach schedule for 2006, currently, please let us know if you'd like us to spend some time with you, learning about the issues and needs you have in your communities, and we'd be happy to bring our two-day session into town. And we've had sessions from 100 folks to 900 folks in Philadelphia. So we'd be more than happy to do it, and we're here at your leisure.
Thank you, Rob. Reverend Height, you want to bring us home, so to speak?
Well, I think the important thing is if faith-based groups are interested in doing it, they've got to go to the training. The training is helpful. It gives you what you need. You've got to be engaged. In the training, you have to be engaged with City Hall. You have to be engaged with other nonprofits working in the neighborhoods. And doing those things, then we can operate out of our passion and what drives us each day. And through that, ultimately what happens is families are helped. And I think we have to keep our sight on that. And so we all don't have the answers alone, but together we bring together all of the pieces that will bring success in this important endeavor.
Thank you, Reverend. You have the last word. It's probably appropriate. Thank you to all the panelists for what I think was an enlightening and exciting way to communicate in a way that we could reach a lot of people around the country. Thank you to all you participants out there for the excellent questions, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity to do something like this again soon. Thank you all, and that closes our conference for today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.